The MoneroTopia guest segment is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero and Bitcoin safely on iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys.
All right, Luke, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on. 4th anniversary too. I was reading that in the chat.
Yeah,
awesome.
this is a big deal.
Cool
this is a big deal.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh my God, it's like the 4 years went very fast for me. Oh my God, these 4 years from when we started Monero Talk in 2018, and then after I ran for Congress, I was like, what am I gonna do now? Like, how do I ramp it up in Monero? Like, the running for Congress as a Monero candidate, like I was like, I got to keep going. I got to keep this thing going. And that's when Sunita and I started MoneroTopia, which became this community show, engaging with the community and just trying to build out the digital cash economy every Saturday morning.
Love it.
But yeah, this feels like we're peaking here. Now we have Brave. 4 years ago, I don't think Brave would have jumped on the show, but now they're coming on. So.
We always welcome. We love being out there, man. Like it's like the one thing about being a browser is like we're kind of this user first ethos, right? And so when you're a browser, you've got to welcome. You want everything to be accessible, right? So like a lot of the tribalism in the crypto space, we just are kind of like, look, like we welcome everybody and we can make privacy better for everybody. And that's, if we're doing that, we're doing our job. And, but I mean, I absolutely love what Monero is doing. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come and engage with the community more is, there's really a lack of variety in the privacy coins, and private transactions are like super important for freedom and everything. And especially, as things just rapidly become more and more cashless. And so, like that's one of the reasons why, like, I mean, we have Zcash support in Brave, and we're working on shielded stuff there, but we need more variety. So we're trying to engage with communities and see what the demand's like, see how much, interest there is in Brave, and see if we can make something happen.
Tell us all about Brave. I honestly don't know much about it. I know it's been around forever. Yeah. It started as the basic attention token, right? And I thought that was a beautiful idea.
Yeah. So I joined Brave and started working with the team in March of 2016, and I think it was within the first 10 or 12 employees or something like that came on early. And at the very beginning, it's always was Brave's kind of a user-first browser, which basically means, or user-first software, which means, you basically build for users first. So you don't allow dark patterns, you're protecting users' privacy, security, you're thinking about the interest of the user. Because if you think about it, like technically speaking, the browser is that user agent. But the problem is that big tech like Google, all these companies have basically like co-opted the user agent for commercial interests and financial gain for themselves. And so you have a space now where browsers really kind of are that final watershed moment where there's no other line of defense for the user, right? Like you if you don't control your browser, what do you really control anymore, right? And so Brendan Eich, our founder or co-founder, he created JavaScript in the 90s. Was early Netscape, co-founded Mozilla, brought Firefox to market when Internet Explorer was kind of like how Google Chrome is now. And so, having created JavaScript, you kind of saw the ways that JavaScript was being misused, right? And so we wanted to make a browser where you just don't have to sacrifice your privacy as a cost of doing business. And beyond that too, we can use like zero knowledge cryptography and a whole bunch of other techniques to actually make, like, business should be able to work with privacy. Like there's kind of this like misnomer that it's like some mutually exclusive thing where, you're in a binary dilemma. You can't have privacy and, let business operate in the same environment. And the reality is, if you respect a user, business absolutely can, exist. Like, and a lot of what we did, especially in the early days, was like, look, like everybody's monetizing everything with advertising. Let's go after that business line as a priority. Like, how can we make it so that you can give a marketer, the analytics that they need to justify their spend and put useful advertising in front of people that does not, does not co-opt their privacy, and it is not privacy invasive at all. And so we basically did that. In 2019, we launched Brave Ads, and basically did local matching on the client with machine learning, like back before it was cool. And as you mentioned, we initially had Bitcoin in the browser, and we were trying to kind of make a different model where we could give a user a revenue share of the ads, because users' attention is like, without it, there's no attention economy, right? And then also give publishers and creators like a way to earn as well that didn't require them kind of being at the mercy of big tech. And so we started with Bitcoin in 2016. We found the difficulties with scaling that, and that was kind of when all the block size war stuff was happening. And then when we saw that Ethereum was making it so that you could tokenize different use cases, that jumped out to us, because attention is a good use case. The attention economy is like, it's a super valuable thing, and it lets us to apply it in a few more kind of like creative ways that could scale better, like than just using Bitcoin for everything. And so there was a hope, I guess I would say. It was probably too optimistic of a hope looking back, but whatever, like that by now Ethereum would have made it more scalable, but now there's just a variety of things, and now basically like our thesis is that attention's everywhere. Like if we're in a multi-chain world, like we should be able to attribute attention everywhere. But yeah, I mean, like we launched our token in 2017. People can go read about it. I'm not going to try and like soft shell it here or anything, but basically like some 14th most adopted token on Ethereum, even now with 2 million plus coins in the market, which is kind of an amazing thing. But
Oh, wow.
We've always been really heads down on just building good software for people, and we catch a lot of shit for that on the community and other side for not hyping things. But whether it's AI in the browser or crypto, like we have self-custody wallet natively integrated into our browser, which is like one of the reasons why I started talk to the community too, is because we started to integrate other blockchains. Like we have Bitcoin's in there, Zcash, any EVM, Solana, et cetera. And so we're looking at the year ahead and shipping a self-custody wallet. It's not just a self-custody wallet. It's like sandboxed in the C++ core browser code, which is like, it's probably like one of the most secure kind of hot wallets you can have, aside from having cold storage, because you don't go to Accenture store. Our privacy and security people are like fanatical with privacy and security, and we have some of the best people like on Earth working on this stuff. But realistically, like if you're building software that gives people their freedom back, and privacy, like if you don't have privacy, every time you mention freedom, it's just colorful language. Like you don't have freedom if you have somebody looking at everything you're doing all the time. It's an absolute myth, right? So if you can't get fundamental privacy for people, then you're wasting your time basically. And the problem I see in the space right now is that there's a lot of hand waving and we'll make these concessions here or there and have some form of privacy, and it's all just kind of lipstick on a pig. And it's one of the reasons why I was stoked to talk to Monero communities, because you guys are as fanatical as a lot of other people around, like having solid privacy, right? Like and I think that the cash, digital cash, having some parity for that, the anonymity you can have, it is an underappreciated, undervalued thing in this space and in tech in general. And I came from ad tech. Like I worked in the belly of the beast of that, like as programmatic advertising was scaling, and I worked between Google, all the ad stacks, and the big media companies. And you see how unaware people are of just the mass scale of data being collected on people all the time. I was in the space. I can't even tell you where the data ends up, because it gets repurposed and basically Xeroxed and shared around and it's passed around. And it's just, the volume of this is insane. When you start to pair that with financial transactions, it's everything. It's everything. And if we're in a space where you can't have some kind of parity to what you have with analog cash, as far as needing anonymity when you need it, it's game over, right? So like for me, this is like a super important area in my line of work at Brave and in our position in the market, is to like one, see what we can do to integrate more options. And it's not easy for us to do that, but we're out here to have the conversation, right, and to see what we can do. But really, like, just even educating people on the fact and why it's so important, because it's almost in some sense, it's almost worse to have no financial privacy than just privacy when you browse, because it's a very slippery slope from having financial surveillance to having a scenario where someone can turn your money off. And that's like food and shelter stuff, right? Like, and so we're all about the fundamentals. And, I know people have different feelings about altcoins or whatever. And we've just kept our heads down, and we want to integrate everything and make everything accessible. If we're limiting options, or we're having too strong a position where, this technology can't live here, but that can, it's just like, we're not a browser to everybody, and we're not user first. And so, yeah, I'm stoked to be here. And in some capacity, whether it's even us just like talking together, right?
Yeah. We need you guys hanging out at MoneroTopia. We need you guys down.
Yeah. I'd love it, man. Like we want to have you guys in the discussion, right? Like, so we're going to be here for a long time. So I mean, like, I just want to let the community know that too, because there are like resource constraints and stuff that we deal with, but like, we're a long-term player in this space, and most likely if something doesn't happen this year, something's going to happen eventually, right? Like, so I don't want people to get discouraged either, but regardless of what happens, I think let's all continue the discussion together, because you can still use all these things in Brave, whether it's directly integrated in our wallet or you're using your favorite wallet anyway, right? So
I'm excited, man. I got a lot of things like going through my head.
Yeah. Sorry, I know I kind of went on.
And I want to make sure I fully. So what is Brave today? Like, what is it? What does it exist? What does it include? The browser, the wallet. Like, what are all the features, and like what can you do with Brave today? And what's kind of the overall vision and mission?
Yeah, so Brave is basically starts with the browser. We've forked over the Chromium open source browser. We've hardened it. We've turned off stuff that phones home. We proxy everything that we can, anything that would. So even at the core browser level, we're being really, really mindful of privacy and security for the user. And then basically, like, anything you can do on Chrome, you can do in Brave, right? Like, you have a browser where you can watch YouTube in the background on mobile without ads, right? Like, you have all these wins that come with privacy, but beyond that, we have AI integrated in the browser. So we have a Leo. It's like a ChatGPT variant that's more privacy preserving, and you can bring your own models into it, which is kind of cool. And so we're really experimenting with the ways that we can use AI and the browser together to help users out. We have integrated self-custody wallet. We have a VPN. We have Brave Talk, which is like a Zoom competitor, but it has end-to-end encryption, and it has ability to do token gating and other things like that. And it has AI integrated into it that you can turn on. Like, we don't turn that stuff on by default, because obviously, like, you don't want users to have their stuff scraped or our whole thing at Brave, like, really fundamentally is like, we want to build great products for people that are user first, and we don't want to know individually who our users are at all. Like, we don't have accounts, we don't have an email like sign up thing, right? Like, we want to make it so that if a hacker or a authority comes and raids our offices or wherever, right, like, that there's nothing for them to take, right? Because if we can do that, and even down to the way, like, there was a thing that came out because MetaMask, I think, was collecting like what's it called, IP ranges, right? From because they have like consensus owns them, so they have like Infura was doing it and MetaMask was doing it. And it's kind of like a painting a picture, right? But then when people were asking us about it, well, we went in and looked, and like, yeah, like our team set it up so that we have like a WAF system that can detect and still fulfill the purpose without having to collect the data. All those little decisions, right, are super key in the process. And that's just because, like, anytime we have like net new code changes or additions or even business relationships, like, we run them through like privacy and security and policy reviews with our team, because our biggest risk to our users is from us, right? So like, if we're not building open source software, and if we're not, being really mindful of this and being really engaged with people in the community, like, where we're not being user first. And so, yeah, like just kind of put it bluntly, like started with a browser, right? Like, and now we've got like all these kind of batteries included things like, self-custody crypto. How can we integrate that from the browser level? We have 80 million monthly active users globally, and a little over 30 million daily active users. And so, having been here from when we had 5 to 10,000 users back in the beginning, it's pretty awesome to see like you come into this space and people tell you that people don't think privacy is important. Oh, why do people care? They're putting their lives on social media. Well, they're not letting you go in their DMs, right? Like, and every user we gain on Brave is just further proving that people will move with their feet to privacy if there's something that's actually useful. And the problem traditionally has been that, with the earlier privacy tools, you actually had to sacrifice usability and like stuff would just break. And the trade-offs were always for like stronger privacy versus compatibility. And on our side, like we've got a really, really great research team that's done a lot of innovating on like, how can we have like best in class privacy protections? And then also like, how can we apply them in a way that doesn't break the web? And so we've done a lot of things around like fingerprinting protection, around like, even things because we're a Chromium fork, we've had to kind of get really scrappy when they used to do this manifest v3 change like last year, where it changed the way that ad blocking extensions work so that they had like a maximum amount of filter lists you could have. And it really broke a lot of the effectiveness of ad blocking, right? Like, because most ad blockers are extension based. Well, our team had basically repackaged all of our ad blocking, put it in the browser core to avoid having any impact from that. And then we even offer like backwards compatibility for a lot of popular ad blocking extensions like uBlock and other things like that, because our users want that. So like, it's about kind of like staying a step ahead in this adversarial space where you've got like all these players in big tech and ad tech that are kind of interweaving everything together and against the user, and really saying, look, like, fuck that, to be frank, like, let's make stuff that's like, for the user and make business work with that, and start with the browser, because that's, the user's kind of window to the web, and then build that into other things around it. And that's just kind of been the natural path. Like we're much more along the lines of like a company that has a lot of services you use with your life, like a Google, than we are just a standalone browser company, right? And so, there's a challenge with that, like in having too many things going on, but our team's been able to manage it pretty well.
And tell me more about the wallet that's integrated into the browser. Like, what are some of the use cases there? What is this allowing you to do when you have the a wallet built into a browser and built into Brave? Are people building applications?
Yeah, a lot of like our initial goal is to let you do everything you could do from an extension based wallet, right, without having to deal with extensions, because there were lots of problems with like fake extensions being out there and things like that were high risk to users. But also like, how can we make it so that we can inform the user as best as possible to avoid issues and put in protections for the user? But also like, there's all this hype around Web3 or whatever, but like no one can really define what it is very well. And there's no better place to, like, if you're really going to have something where this technology is integrated, it needs to be in the browser. And the big part from my perspective, like, crypto is like this power tool for people, right? Like, it's a great way to empower people. And a lot of the problem in this industry, from my point of view, is that we kind of like let it live in a silo off to the side. And there's so much Rube Goldberg kind of like, just like, I don't know, navel gazing over gimmickry and instrumentation, where like we really need to be moving the crypto rails next to your saved payments in the browser. We need to be making a home for everything and demystifying it, because once people know the benefits, like, and once we make it easy to use, like, there's no reason why you would want a counterparty to do all the stuff that they're having to do. And people would start to realize, God, I'm getting fleeced everywhere. Just like taxes, it's like you're also getting, fees and all these other things all over the place. So the idea here is basically like, what are ways we can use the technology, whether it's like media deployment with NFTs or token gating or fungible token use cases, giving creators more control over their financial empowerment, right? Like in their content creation and giving them additional options. Some of these things are still pretty nascent. That's the kind of challenge in the space, is that there's like a lot of hand waving. And so you really want to have great like distributed file hosting and all these things. And then sometimes it's just like people's expectations are that it needs to work like a Web 2 service. And so you really have to like, some of it's like waiting for the pieces to come together. Other stuff, it's like, no, we can make like signing easier. We can make things work really well, like store things through the wallet, to make people think about the wallet in a different way, but also like demystify the crypto part and just kind of put it all together. And I think it's one of the really interesting things right now about the past couple of weeks is that like these executive orders get overthrown and stuff, and basically, these executive orders get tossed out or put out there and really remove the blockers. That's going to do so much to kind of demystify crypto, and people. A lot of people
seems
think
like
about
it's
either
good,
like
good for privacy tech, right? Good for Monero, good for privacy.
Oh my
tech.
God, dude! Like the Fifth Circuit on Tornado Cash, like removing those sanctions, right? Like and regardless of what people feel about that, like it is difficult to develop software in an environment where privacy tool developers are getting put in jail or in legal risk, right? Like, and the thing that people don't realize about what's been so bad over the last 4.5 years is that if you're a startup, right, in this world, you have a 90%, your mortality rate's really high, right? Like in general, if you're doing something in crypto, like you have to add so much more on top of that, right? Like you have to have legal expertise, you have to have all these other. You basically become a lawyer in the process, right? Like, and all that takes time and away from finding product market fit. And so some of the recent changes have been really awesome to see. And I think, demystifying this, like, and doing that in Brave is kind of key for us, right? So we're thinking about, okay, how can we extend beyond the browser, right? Like, how can we make AI work with the browser to make it easier for people to use crypto? Like, and doing this all in a way that has a user in control and is, the user's informed, and, all the ethos that we really hold true. So yeah, long-winded answer, but just kind of.
The fight against privacy tech that we're seeing from the feds, they're basically, taking action against privacy tech developers. Did that give you guys hesitance to add Monero, or just Monero was just kind of overlooked?
It wasn't like a Monero issue. I think for us, it's always been resource constraints and like either
it's its own animal too when you add Monero, right? It's not
that's
like
the thing. That's the thing with the L1 integrations, right? Like it's like once you get one done, so like we did Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden any UXTO chain was like something we could, do a lot easier than getting that initial thing done. And so anytime there's a new novel piece for the integration that has new dependencies and things like that, it requires extra work. And I think the thing people need to understand too is like, we're not an extension. So if there's not a Chromium API for it, we're having to make wallet APIs in C++ that are privacy and security focused, right? Like for all these things. And so our team, like it is kind of a heavy lift for us to do these things. That said, I mean, like, that's why we were reaching out too, because we're looking at the next year ahead and we're trying to kind of see like, look, like we hadn't been out there a lot with the Monero community. And the thing that's the funny thing about privacy people is that unless it's their software that's broken, they don't like to talk about their finances very much, right? So like sometimes it takes just getting out there and saying, hey, Monero community, what do you guys think about Brave? Like, we're looking at the road ahead, and a lot of it's like, yeah, we, just priorities and stuff, right? Like, and kind of getting table stake. We still don't have there's still table stake things that we need in the wallet that we haven't done yet. So there's a balance between like, okay, if we want to add something, we've got to figure out how are we going to finance it, right? Like, how are we going to get the funding for it? How are we going to get the bandwidth? What else needs to move in priority, right? Like, and like we want to have staking in our wallet. We want to have a bunch of stuff that we haven't done for a volley of reasons. Now that a lot of these new things opened up too, it's kind of like, oh wow, well, if we're not having to worry about enforcement action on, smart contract stuff the same way. Like, well, we might want to get a couple of these things in to get a bigger user base, because then any integration we do is going to have a bigger network effect than it is if we don't, right? So like, there's just a ton of things to balance with this. And but that said, I mean, like, there's nothing stopping us from talking about privacy together, or going out to market with things, or, kind of educating the public together. And I think that if we're only around one privacy tech, whether that's financial or otherwise, like we're not serving the market well. I think people need variety for a variety of reasons, right? And I think that then the question becomes like, the variety that you're giving people, it better be good. And that's why we're talking to you guys. So
what would an implementation of Monero look like? It would just be Monero would be added to the wallet and it'd be, you'd be holding it in a pure way. You're holding your keys, but essentially stored in the browser.
Yeah, exactly. And it would work much like another wallet integration would work. But also, I mean, think about it this way, the browser is kind of like where people spend all their time too. And one thing we're thinking about is like, God, like, private messaging is awesome. It'd be really great to have a private Venmo, have a private, where it is literally edge to edge peer to peer, right? Like, and having ways.
What I was going to get at with you, I mean, we built xmrbazaar.com. It all runs in the browser.
Nice.
We built Monero multisig into the browser. Transactions are made peer to peer, and they go to people's offline wallets.
Perfect.
But yeah,
that's the way, man.
Monero jobs. But I'm wondering if there's a way where XMR Bazaar can do things that it can't do now if it was running if you're using it through Brave browser. Once Brave implements Monero, now you're using your Brave web wallet to. I wonder if it can make that more seamless for users.
I'm sure there is. I mean, yeah, like, and the thing is with these integrations too, like, you always have kind of a mental model for what you want to see happen. And then you have how the market reacts. And then the beautiful thing about what we do is that we are engaged with our users all the time, right? So part of finding that product market fit is listening to the users and hearing demand, and also seeing how people use it. And one thing that we've done really well is like be able to figure out how to make diagnostics work without compromising the user's privacy. So like seeing like, cool, like people really want to do this peer-to-peer, or people really want to have better e-commerce that's more private, or people want to have whatever. I mean, like there's all sorts of interesting ways that this can work, and people are getting more kind of cross-chain, multi-chain friendly too. There's ways that we could even potentially like, have a certain privacy layer on something, and fuzz it out a bit to where like, I mean, the blessing and the curse about having public blockchains is that, they're public. And so, we need to get better about having ways to have better privacy in a transparent environment like that when you need it.
Some tough questions here. This is the Monero community after all, and they get right to the core of any privacy tech. Claims to be body, tipped $1 is asking, perhaps it's a slight faux pas to ask, but could Luke compare, contrast Brave to ungoogled Chromium, Vandium, basically comparing it to the other browsers, LibreWolf.
We actually have a great page in our GitHub wiki. So if you go to Brave, github.com/Brave, and then our Brave browser wiki, there's a page there that's deviations from Chromium, where we basically list out, it's over 40, it's not even comprehensive either, but it's over 40 plus different treatments we apply to the Chromium source code to block stuff that phones home to Google, that proxy stuff to avoid users, to limit the identification risk, that hardens things. So certain APIs we turn off, like Bluetooth APIs, and even things like Widevine. You have to, like, if you really want to scale a browser, people want to watch Netflix, but like we don't have to enable that by default, right? So you go to Hulu or Netflix or whatever that has DRM protected stuff, you get a prompt to turn Widevine on if you want to watch it. So there's a balance here with letting people do what they want to do and might not say they want to do, but giving them a path to where they don't have to switch a browser to do it. But really, what changes us comparatively to those other options is one, those deviations, the way that we harden it, the way that we have the basic protection with our ad blocking, tracking protection, fingerprinting protection, all in the browser, right? Like you don't have to add any extra extensions or do anything like that. And then also our focus on usability and on the other important thing is that our team always tries very hard. We have engineers that literally just focus on keeping us on the latest version of Chromium, because the reason why we use Chromium is they have like the best security in the browser space, like hands down. And so when it comes to security, a lot of the updates, they have patches for security problems, things like that. And when you start to look at Chromium browsers, a lot of them like are pretty slow on updating versions to the latest releases. We're very fast about that. So there's always this kind of like mindset of having the right tempo that keeps us up as close to the latest version of Chromium as possible. And that gets forgotten a lot by a lot of folks. But LibreWolf, these are other good options too, right? Like, like if you're using a privacy browser, great. Like that puts you ahead. We hope you use Brave. But I think that, it is this mix of making something usable. We're not making something that's going to keep you, like if you're running from a state actor, don't use default Brave, right? Like get something crazier because you have a crazier, threat model, right? But like if you're an everyday user or that wants to have better privacy, you can always add extensions on top of it, right? Like, but we want to just have out of the box good privacy for people,
right?
And so
it's like Monero, right? Monero is a tool for evading mass surveillance, right? If you're pinpointed and somebody's coming after you, it's like if you're using cash, right? You're on the video camera at the ATM at the right. So privacy tools only go so far. Brave seems like it strikes the right balance between UX and being a good tool for preventing mass surveillance.
We put a lot of effort on compatibility, right? Yeah. Go ahead. I can maybe like do one more question. I'm sorry, I got a family thing I gotta run to too. I didn't mean to.
No worries.
Yeah, I know you're a little low on time. I just
guys,
I can come back too.
Like and share. 465 live viewers. Let's get more people in here, and Luke, we'll just get one or more questions in there if we can.
So looking at like the Zcash integration, I'm guessing that was done in like sort of like a light wallet way. So like thinking about how maybe if you guys ended up integrating Monero, would that be more of like a full wallet that does all the synchronization locally, or is it going to be more of a light wallet model so that it's like quick and seamless for users?
I think it'd be a to be determined thing, right? Like that we would talk through as part of the process of getting the integration work done. But whatever we would do, the thing that we do at Brave is always very iterative. We have multiple browser channels, like we have, a nightly channel, beta and release channel, and we're very rolling thunder, very open source with everything. It's not like Apple where you get like a big boom and here's like the completed thing. It's always this iterative process. So like with Zcash, for example, like we did base level support where you can do send and receives and getting kind of the table stakes done. And we haven't yet released shielded transactions. Like that's the next thing, but we kind of break it up into chunks. And that's what we do with every L1 integration we've ever done. So like even things like Solana, like out of the gate, it was like, okay, you can send, receive and sign and, access dApps and then eventually add NFTs and other things that people demand. Right. But it's always very iterative. So that's what it would be with Monero too. And I think that what we would do is probably work with the community, because I would imagine, and this is something I can use some help from the community on too. And my DMs are open on X, by the way. Please hit me up on this stuff. But like looking for ways of like how we project plan this, like, and how we would get funding together, and then how we could attack it. Like, and I know that it's very community oriented. So like figuring out where the best avenues are for having those engagements and all that. I'd love to get some DMs from folks that might be able to help shepherd it. And I have already too, for what it's worth. So yeah, but So that's kind of how I see it going. Very iterative.
Awesome. Yeah, that's kind of how we implement new stuff at Cake. It's a little more iterative. We don't necessarily have everything at once, but yeah, excited to see what could potentially come out of this integration of Monero. And yeah,
Even if, I mean, like even if it's, dude, like even in the interim, just working with Cake, right? Like you guys have a good Monero integration. Like there's stuff like we're doing this rewards 3.0 overhaul where it's basically going to end up being like a lot of like offer modules on a wall, and it's a place where we can showcase different ecosystems. And there's nothing stopping us from like including Monero stuff in there, right? Like because it's good for privacy, it's good exposure for you guys, and so like we should definitely follow up offline about what we could do together.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Cool.
Be sure to showcase XMR Bazaar as well.
Yeah, well, let's talk, man. Seriously, I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
and I'd love to come back.
You're gonna be at the
longer.
next MoneroTopia. We're gonna get Brave down
Let's
there.
do it. Just tell me where it is, man.
Happen.
Like, if I can make it happen, I'm there, dude.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, man. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for hanging out and waiting for the price report to finish. We know you're busy man. And
it's just I've got a 6 and 8 year old, and the Dogman movie came out, so I owe them a date to go take them to that Dogman movie. But I'd love to come back for like a fuller session whenever. And I also do a community call every Tuesday on Brave Talk, and I host our Brave Technologist podcast. I'd love to have Monero people on the show too. Like I said, DM me. I'd love to have people on. Yeah, get more faces from Monero in our Brave Talk podcast too.